Hi everyone. In June of this year, David Lesbarrères, an evolutionary ecologist and Dean of Graduate Studies at Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario, sent out a tweet, which has now been deleted, that said, "And shockingly enough on our campuses, even white males receive racist comments about their past. Why can't we all see that we were once a monkey, let alone a bacteria? All lives matter." Now, unfortunately, this all lives matter trap is one that well-meaning people can fall into when they want to emphasize equality and unity, because in a nutshell, Black Lives Matter advocates and activists, they see the saying all lives matter as detracting from the lifting up of Black voices. So they'll say, yeah, we all know that all lives matter, so why can't you just for once focus on the undervaluing of Black lives? That's their argument. So with these people who say all lives matter, they're not racist, they're not terrible people, they're just a little bit out of touch, and they're not following the social media politics around this all lives matter phrase. I compare it to this. I had a boss once who wanted to refer to a Chinese man, and so she said, "That Oriental gentleman over there." So she was, a middle-aged woman, probably in her late 40s, and this job had nothing to do with media, politics, academia, activism, nothing like that. Very apolitical job. So she was simply not aware that we don't say Oriental anymore. At one point, Oriental was the preferred term, but that was decades ago, and that's probably where this particular woman dropped off of the, political correctness treadmill, as Steven Pinker calls it. So I don't think, she's not a racist or terrible person. She was just out of touch with what we say now. And like this Laurentian University professor, David Lesbarrères, he likely didn't realize that saying all lives matter is seen as basically taking away from the lifting up of Black voices. But like a good boy, he sent out his apology a day after his controversial tweets. He tweeted, "Last night, I issued a tweet that hurt many people. I apologize for my words and understand that I must educate myself further about Black Lives Matter and Twitter. I didn't know that hashtag existed and now realize it is rooted in values I do not hold and that I strongly condemn. I pledge to continue to educate myself, continue the fight for inclusivity and against racism, and I apologize to all people I have hurt." Now, I'm not one of these types who says, never apologize because they'll come for you anyways, because I think in some cases apologies make sense. But with this apology, you can really tell that he's using all the words they want to hear. He's hurt people. He's going to educate himself. That's the most important. He's going to fight against racism. Okay, sure. But as is often the case, your apology won't save you. And so Laurentian University first issued this statement. They said, "Yesterday, our Dean of Graduate Studies issued an inappropriate and offensive tweet. He has since apologized publicly for his comments, which, by his own admission, have hurt many people in our Laurentian community and beyond. The university is following up on this expeditiously and with the utmost care and attention." Let's be totally clear. There was nothing wrong with what Lesbarrères said. The only thing he can be accused of is being a little bit out of touch and not using the preferred lingo of the activists. But that's really the worst of what he did, what he said. So there was nothing wrong with his tweet. And then that Laurentian University statement directs students on how they can get counseling, which is just tragic. About 2 weeks later, President and Vice Chancellor Robert Achey released a second statement. This one said, "Further to my statement of June 9th, condemning racism on campus, today I wish to communicate with the Laurentian community that Dr. David Lesbarrères will be stepping down from his day-to-day functions as Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies for an indeterminate period, effective immediately." So his institution threw him under the bus. They are not standing up for him, not defending him. What does make this case a little bit different, though, is that a large contingent of professors and students came out in support of Lesbarrères, and they even started a petition to get him reinstated as dean, and that is all ongoing right now. So that's something that's a little more rare. Now, this all happened in June 2020, and because it happened in, a less populated place, Sudbury, Ontario, at a lesser known university, this kind of flew under everyone's radar. But it was an op-ed published this month that brought some attention to this case, so now more people are talking about it. What I want to do now is read through this op-ed, which was written by 3 Laurentian-affiliated professors and published in the Sudbury Star. Cancel culture has no place at Laurentian. Okay, great. To lobby to damage the reputation, career, or family livelihood of people who disagree with you is not a particularly magnanimous instinct and mode of human behavior. It is even less honorable when the person simply made a human error. Worse still, if they felt deeply sorry and immediately apologized for the mistake, but the unforgiving mob still persisted in its cheap performative justice. President Obama has called this sort of thing call-out culture, or cancel culture. Oh, did President Barack Obama come up with the term cancel culture? A lot of people talk about cancel culture. The authors are being very careful here to name drop someone who would be seen as progressive. Most recently in Sudbury, it happened to David Lesbarrères, the French evolutionary ecologist and Dean of Graduate Studies at Laurentian University. We can all learn from his story. He is the canary in the coal mine. He's the canary in the coal mine? Well, I'm going to be charitable here and assume that the authors are talking exclusively about their university, because this case is not the canary in the coal mine. It is just a continuation of what's been happening for years. The authors of this op-ed criticize Lesbarrères' tweet. They say it was not the best time to bring up anti-white racism. It was a poorly worded tweet. He shouldn't have used the word monkey. He shouldn't have used the hashtag All Lives Matter. And he deployed a microaggression by saying that anti-white racism exists in the first place. And somewhat laughably, the authors claim that you probably need a PhD in critical race studies to understand that many people today disbelieve in anti-white racism. But no, you don't need a PhD in critical race studies for that. The media and activist class is always telling us that racism against whites does not exist, or it's not real structural institutional racism. So don't worry, we non-PhD holders are very well aware that there is a disbelief in anti-white racism. They continue, if anything, we felt the apology was a tad excessive. We try to teach our children to apologize sincerely for honest mistakes, but not to grovel, especially if they are being pressured. When that happens, they should stand their ground. Why? Because what sensible people want is your apology, not subjugation. And insensible people will ultimately accept neither, because what they want is blood under the guise of deconstruction. Okay, that is true. To employers, presidents, and board members everywhere, we say, stand by your falsely accused employees. Defend them publicly against online and on-campus purity mobs. Be the adult in the room. Do not cave in, etc., etc. Regardless of melanin levels, sexual orientations, and political leanings, the vast majority of students, faculty, staff, and other stakeholders, the vast majority of humanity, still recognize genuine virtue from cheap virtue signaling and will thank you for it. Okay, nice. And they kind of end on this note. Together, let's call out this disgraceful and illiberal call-out culture. If we stopped being collective cowards, we could end it tomorrow. But if we do not muster our courage, we will lose also our remaining students to YouTube and Jordan Peterson. Come help bail the boat instead. The academy is worth defending. We will need all hands on deck. So right after the authors rail against cheap virtue signaling, they take a cheap shot against Jordan Peterson. You know, they just had to, didn't they? But newsflash, you can really appreciate the academy as an institution and also like Jordan Peterson on YouTube. I consider myself in that category. I believe in the purpose of the university, and I also like Jordan Peterson on YouTube. It's just unfortunate that they have to try so hard to convey. They have to drop all these hints throughout their op-ed to convey that they are the good guys, they are the progressives, they're the liberals, you know, they're superior to those who like YouTube and Jordan Peterson. Like, oh, we're not like that. And I used to fall into that trap too, of needing to prove that, you know, I'm one of the good guys, and you know, I'm a liberal, I'm progressive. But now I just kind of trust that people who understand me will understand me, and people who won't. Anyway, so this case at Laurentian University, it's not a canary in the coal mine. We've seen a dozen stories like it just this summer alone. And I hope we do read more op-eds like the one we just read that defend canceled people. But I hope that those op-eds don't feel the need to take those cheap shots to, indicate some sort of intellectual and moral superiority, because I don't think that that is necessary. It's actually very similar to the Harper's letter that was published this summer in July that made quite a buzz. It was called A Letter on Justice and Open Debate, and it was signed by very notable people. Noam Chomsky, Margaret Atwood, J.K. Rowling were among the signatories. And the letter, it stood up for debate, open inquiry, expression, but of course they had to take a shot at Donald Trump. So I think it takes away from the power of these written pieces, whether it's this letter or an op-ed, when you can see that they were so deliberately inserting things that would indicate their moral and intellectual superiority. So I hope we see less of that. I don't know if we will, though, because it's kind of the name of the game right now. I'm Lindsay Shepherd with True North. Thanks so much for watching.